Before we begin, if you're enjoying these stories from law enforcement, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps the channel grow, and I'm curious, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's talk about Halloween 1994, and the night I learned that some costumes aren't costumes at all. My name is Daniel Graves, and I spent 22 years as a Pennsylvania state trooper before I retired in 2006. I've worked fatal accidents, drug busts, domestic violence calls, and everything in between. I thought I'd seen every kind of evil a person could inflict on another, but Halloween night 1994 showed me I was wrong. Some evil isn't human at all. I was 40 years old that October, a senior trooper working out of Troop M in Washington County, southwestern Pennsylvania. It's rural country out there, rolling hills, small towns, farms, and plenty of woods. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where people still left their doors unlocked, and where Halloween meant kids running through neighborhoods until their pillowcases were full of candy. October 31st, 1994, fell on a Monday. I'd drawn the evening shift, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., which meant I'd be working straight through prime trick-or-treating hours. My wife Karen wasn't happy about it. Our daughter Emily was 11 and wanted her dad to take her out like I had every year before. But someone had to work, and as a senior guy, I couldn't complain too much about pulling holiday duty. "Just be safe out there," Karen said, as I headed out the door in my uniform. "And try to make it home for at least some of the night." "I'll do my best," I promised, kissing her goodbye. "Tell Em I'll take her to get discount candy tomorrow. Half price at CVS." I had no idea that by the time I got home I'd be a different person, that the things I'd see that night would change everything I thought I knew about the world. The shift started normally enough. I did my usual patrol route through Canonsburg, Houston, and the smaller towns in between. The streets were full of kids in costumes, parents walking alongside with flashlights, teenagers in groups pushing the boundaries of how old was too old for trick-or-treating. I waved at families, kept an eye on traffic, made sure everyone stayed safe. Around 7:30 p.m., just as it was getting dark, I got my first call. Dispatch came through on the radio, the voice of Linda Murphy, who'd been our dispatcher for 15 years. "Troop M14, we have a 911 call from 4287 Hickory Lane in Cecil Township. Caller reports suspicious persons in tactical gear following his family during trick-or-treating. He's armed and requesting immediate assistance." I felt my stomach tighten. Armed civilian, suspicious persons, trick-or-treating. That was a recipe for tragedy if not handled carefully. "M14 responding," I said into the radio. "ETA 8 minutes. Any description on the suspicious persons?" Caller states there are 5 individuals, all wearing black tactical gear, vests, boots, and full face masks. They were observed following the family for approximately 10 minutes. Caller drew his weapon and confronted them. Subjects fled into woods near Muse Bishop Road. Black tactical gear, full face masks. That didn't sound like Halloween costumes. That sounded like something else entirely. I hit my lights and headed toward Cecil Township, a quiet residential area about 15 minutes outside of Canonsburg. Hickory Lane was in one of the nicer neighborhoods, big houses with large yards, perfect for trick-or-treating. I radioed for backup and got confirmation that Trooper James Morrison was also en route. When I pulled onto Hickory Lane, I immediately spotted the family. A man in his late 20s stood on the sidewalk, his arm around a teenage girl and a young boy. Even from 50 feet away, I could see they were shaken. The man had his hand near his waistband, and I made a mental note that he was likely still armed. I approached slowly, hands visible, calling out before I got too close. "State Police, I'm Trooper Graves. Are you the one who called?" The man nodded, his jaw tight. "Marcus Bennett. This is my sister Savannah and my nephew Jackson. We were walking back to our car when we noticed someone following us." I pulled out my notepad. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" Marcus took a breath, clearly trying to stay calm for the kids. We'd been trick-or-treating for about 2 hours. Everything was normal, everyone was friendly. But when we were heading back to the car, I looked across the street and saw someone standing in a dark yard. No porch lights on, just this person standing there in all black. At first, I thought it was just someone trying to be creepy for Halloween, but something felt off. "What made you think that?" "The way they were dressed. It wasn't a Halloween costume. It was tactical gear, like military or SWAT. Black vest, black boots, black pants tucked into the boots, and they were wearing a full mask, like a balaclava. Complete face coverage." Savannah, the teenage girl, spoke up. Her voice was shaky. "They were watching us. I could feel it, even though I couldn't see their face." "So, what happened next?" I asked, keeping my tone calm and professional. "I told the kids to stay close and we kept walking toward the car," Marcus continued. "I kept looking back and the person was still there, just standing and watching. Then, when we got about a block away, I heard footsteps behind us. Heavy footsteps like boots on concrete. I turned around, and there they were, following us." "Just one person at that point?" "Yeah, just one. But when I saw them up close in better light, I realized how serious this was. This wasn't some guy trying to scare people. This was someone dressed for, I don't know, for tactical operation or something. That's when I told the kids what was happening and to keep walking." Jackson, the young boy who looked about 11, added quietly, "He told us not to look back. He said someone was following us and we needed to stay calm. When we got to the car," Marcus said, "they were still following. That's when I pulled my weapon. I have a concealed carry permit, and I had my Glock with me. I pointed it at them and asked why they were following us. My hand instinctively moved near my own weapon. How did they respond? They raised their hands like they were surprised. Then they slowly took off their mask. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s. She just stared at me for a moment, didn't say anything. So I asked again. That's when she gave me this story about being an undercover cop investigating a break-in. What exactly did she say?" Marcus's expression darkened. "She said she was an undercover cop, that there'd been a break-in report, and that when I looked at her funny, she thought I was the suspect. She told me to lower my weapon or she'd arrest me for threatening an officer. That made no sense on multiple levels. Did she show you any identification?" "No, no badge, no ID, nothing, and her story didn't add up. Why would an undercover cop be standing in front of a house facing away from it if she was investigating a break-in? Why would she be in full tactical gear if she was undercover? And what was with the hooded cloak she was wearing over the gear? She had a cloak? Yeah, like a Halloween costume cloak, but she was wearing tactical gear underneath. It made no sense. I wrote this all down, my unease growing. So you lowered your weapon?" "I did. I didn't want to risk getting arrested or making things worse with the kids there." But I didn't believe her story. Then she said something that really scared me. She smiled, this really creepy smile, and said, "If you didn't have that gun, this night would have ended a hell of a lot different for you." Savannah was crying now, and Jackson looked pale. Marcus put his arms around both of them. "That's when I saw the others," Marcus continued. 4 more people in tactical gear, no cloaks this time, just the gear and masks. 3 men and 1 woman based on their builds. They came out from between houses and started walking toward us. I got the kids in the car and we drove off. The woman was still standing there smiling. The others just had these blank expressions, like they weren't even human. Did you get a license plate on any vehicle they might have been using? I didn't see any vehicles. They just appeared from between the houses like they'd been hiding there. Trooper Morrison pulled up then, and I briefed him quickly on the situation. We decided to canvass the area, look for any sign of the 5 individuals Marcus had described. "Mr. Bennett," I said, "I'm going to need you to wait here with Trooper Morrison while I check out where you saw these people. Can you show me on this map exactly where you first saw the woman?" Marcus pointed to a house about 4 blocks from where we were standing. "Right there. 1847 Oakmont Street. Dark house, no lights on." "And where did the others appear from?" He indicated an area between 2 houses on Maple Avenue. "Somewhere around there. But officer, I need to tell you something else. A few days after this happened, I got a text from an unknown number. It was just a photo, no message. The photo was of my car in my apartment complex parking lot. Someone knows where I live. That elevated this from a disturbing encounter to potential stalking and threats." "Do you still have that text?" "Yeah, I do. I filed a report with the local police, but they said they couldn't do anything without a direct threat. I'll need you to forward that to me. We'll pursue this more aggressively than the local PD. This is stalking at minimum, possibly attempted assault or kidnapping." I left Marcus with Morrison and drove to Oakmont Street. The house he'd indicated was indeed dark, an older 2-story home with a deep front yard. I pulled into the driveway and approached the front door, knocking firmly. After a moment, a man in his mid-40s answered, looking confused about why a state trooper was at his door on Halloween night. "Good evening, sir. I'm Trooper Graves. Did you experience any unusual activity tonight? Any break-ins or attempted break-ins?" He shook his head. "No, nothing like that. I went to bed early, had work this morning." "Why? Did something happen?" "We had a report of suspicious persons in tactical gear in this neighborhood. One was reportedly standing in your yard around 7 p.m. You didn't notice anything?" "I didn't see anyone. I was inside the whole time. What do you mean, tactical gear?" I described what Marcus had told me. The homeowner looked increasingly concerned, but confirmed he'd heard and seen nothing unusual. He gave me permission to look around his property. Using my flashlight, I searched the yard where Marcus said he'd first seen the woman. The grass was slightly disturbed, like someone had been standing there, but that wasn't conclusive. What I found next made my skin crawl. Near the tree line at the back of the property, I found footprints. Heavy boot prints pressed deep into the soft earth, but they didn't lead anywhere. They just stopped at the edge of the woods, like whoever made them had simply vanished. I called Morrison over. "Look at this. Prints just end. No trail leading away, no continuation into the woods." Morrison shined his flashlight on the prints, then into the woods beyond. "Maybe they jumped? Tried to cover their tracks?" From a standing position, that's a 6-foot jump minimum to clear this area, and there's no disturbance where they'd land. We searched the area between the houses where Marcus said the others had appeared. Again, we found boot prints, multiple sets this time, but they all led to the same place, the edge of the woods, and there they stopped. "This doesn't make sense," Morrison muttered. 5 people in tactical gear stalking a family on Halloween night and they just disappear into thin air? "Let's check the woods," I said, though something in my gut told me we wouldn't find anything. We spent 30 minutes searching with flashlights, but the woods were empty. No sign of anyone, no trails, no vehicles hidden nearby. Nothing. We returned to Marcus and took his full statement, got his contact information, and took photos of the text he'd received. I assured him we'd investigate thoroughly and that I'd personally follow up. After Marcus left with his sister and nephew, Morrison and I stood on the empty street, Halloween decorations swaying in the October breeze. "What do you make of it?" Morrison asked. "I don't know, but something's wrong here. Those footprints, the way they just stopped. The fact that these people were dressed for tactical operation but were stalking civilians. And that photo sent to Marcus afterward. Someone's running an operation here." "On Halloween? Why?" "Best time to move around unnoticed," I said. "Everyone's in costume. Lots of people out on the streets. Easy to blend in. Easy to watch potential victims without raising suspicion until it's too late." "You think they're planning something bigger?" "I don't know. But we need to find out who these people are and what they want." We were about to head back to our patrol areas when the radio crackled again. Linda's voice, more urgent this time. "All units, we have multiple 911 calls coming from the Meadowview Family Resort in South Franklin Township. Reports of suspicious persons in tactical gear watching children during a Halloween hayride." Callers describe 5 individuals matching the description from the Cecil Township incident. Respond immediately. My blood ran cold. They were still out there. And now they were at a resort where there would be dozens of families, hundreds of potential victims. "Morrison, you take the Oakmont area. Keep searching." I'm heading to Meadowview. I hit my lights and siren and headed south on Route 19. Meadowview Resort was about 20 minutes away, a small family place that hosted events and had cabins for rent. If these people were targeting another location on the same night, this was coordinated. This was planned. And Halloween was far from over. As I drove through the dark Pennsylvania countryside, past cornfields and old farmhouses decorated with jack-o'-lanterns, I couldn't shake the image of those footprints ending at the tree line. 5 people who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. But they weren't ghosts. They were real. Marcus had seen them, confronted one, even drawn a weapon on her. They were flesh and blood, weren't they? I pushed that thought away and focused on getting to Meadowview. Whatever these people were, whatever they wanted, I had to stop them before someone got hurt. The road ahead was dark and empty, my headlights cutting through the night. Above, a full moon hung in the sky, orange and huge. The kind of moon that belonged on Halloween. The kind of moon that made you believe in monsters. And as I crossed into South Franklin Township, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was about to find out if monsters were real after all. Meadowview Family Resort sat at the end of a winding dirt road, surrounded by thick woods on 3 sides. As I pulled into the parking lot, I could see the place was lit up with orange lights and decorations. Families were gathered near a large barn where a tractor-pulled wagon was parked, presumably for the hayride. But the festive atmosphere was broken by the cluster of panicked parents near the main lodge. I got out and was immediately approached by a man in his late 30s wearing a resort staff jacket. His name tag said manager, Rick Patterson. "Thank God you're here," he said, his voice tight with stress. "We've got a serious situation. Parents are saying someone's been watching the kids, following them. We had to stop the hayride halfway through." "Tell me exactly what happened." Rick led me toward the barn where about 20 families were gathered, some with children still in Halloween costumes. A woman in her 30s pushed forward from the group. "Officer, my son saw them." "On the hayride, men in the woods watching us." "Ma'am, I'm Trooper Graves. What's your name?" "Ellen Martinez. My son Ryan is 12. He's over there." She pointed to a boy sitting on a hay bale looking shaken. "He said he saw someone standing in the woods during the hayride." At first, I thought it was part of the act, to scare people. But he said it wasn't dressed like the other actors. I approached Ryan slowly, kneeling down to his level. "Hey Ryan, I'm Trooper Graves. Your mom says you saw something during the hayride. Can you tell me about it?" Ryan looked up at me with wide eyes. There was a man in the woods. He wasn't part of the show. He was just standing there watching. He was wearing all black, like soldier clothes, and he had a mask on his face, the kind that covers everything. Where exactly did you see him? About halfway through the ride. We were going through the dark part, where the trees are really thick. Everyone else was looking at the actors jumping out, but I looked to the side and saw him just standing there. He wasn't moving or doing anything, just watching. Another parent stepped forward, a man in his 40s. My daughter saw them too, but she said there were more than one. She counted 4 of them in different spots along the trail. I felt a chill run down my spine. Did anyone else see them? Any adults? Several people shook their heads, but one woman raised her hand. I saw something. I thought it was part of the show at first, but when I really looked, I realized the person wasn't dressed like the other actors. They were in tactical gear, like police or military, and they were watching us, not trying to scare us, just watching. I radioed for additional units and asked Rick to show me the hayride trail. We took flashlights and walked the path the tractor had followed. The trail wound through dense woods, with torches placed at intervals to light the way. The actors are positioned here, here, and here, Rick said, pointing to various spots. They jump out, make noise, scare people. Standard haunted hayride stuff, but we've never had anyone else on the trail. The woods are posted as private property. We don't allow anyone back here except staff. As we walked deeper into the woods, I started noticing things. Boot prints in the soft earth, similar to the ones I'd found at Oakmont Street. They were positioned at observation points along the trail, places where someone could watch the hayride pass without being easily seen. Rick, have you had any issues with trespassers recently? No, nothing. This is the first time anything like this has happened. We reached a spot about halfway through the trail where the trees were particularly thick and the light from the torches didn't penetrate well. I shined my flashlight around and saw more boot prints here. Multiple sets, all military-style tactical boots based on the tread pattern. But again, they didn't lead anywhere. They just stopped. I followed one set of prints to a large oak tree. The prints led right up to the trunk, then vanished. I shined my light up into the branches but saw nothing. I circled the tree, but there were no prints leading away. Rick, is there any way someone could have climbed this tree without leaving evidence? I don't see how. The bark is rough, you'd definitely leave marks. And the lowest branch is 8 feet up, you'd need a ladder. I examined the ground more carefully, and that's when I found something else. Scratched into the bark at about chest height were marks. Not random scratches from animals or weather. These were deliberate, carved with something sharp. They were tally marks. 17 vertical lines, crossed by 3 horizontal lines, 20 marks total. What does that mean? Rick asked, peering over my shoulder. I don't know, but someone's keeping count of something. We continued checking the trail and found similar marks on 3 other trees. Always the same, 20 tally marks, and always near spots where boot prints ended abruptly. By the time we returned to the lodge, more state police units had arrived. Sergeant Barbara Chen, my immediate supervisor, was coordinating with the resort staff to take statements from everyone who'd been on the hayride. Graves, what have we got? She asked as I approached. I briefed her on everything. The Cecil Township incident, the boot prints that led nowhere, and now the same pattern here at the resort. I showed her photos of the tally marks. 20 marks, Chen said, studying the image. 20 what? Victims? Sightings? I don't know. But Sergeant, there's something else. The descriptions match perfectly between both locations. 5 people in tactical gear, full face masks, watching families with children. They don't engage unless confronted. They just watch. Could be a gang doing reconnaissance for future crimes. Identify wealthy families, learn their patterns. That's what I thought at first. But these boot prints, the way they just end. And look at this. I showed her the photo of the prints leading to the oak tree. No indication of climbing, no prints leading away. They just stop. Chen frowned. There has to be an explanation. Maybe they're using some technique to cover their tracks. In multiple locations, perfectly executed, on the busiest night of the year when they know we're spread thin. This is coordinated, Sergeant. This is planned. Before Chen could respond, one of the other troopers called out, "Sergeant, we've got another call. Home invasion attempt in progress, Jefferson Hills. Suspect description matches our tactical gear individuals." Jefferson Hills was 45 minutes north. They were hitting multiple locations spread across the county, all on the same night. "Graves, you take that one," Chen ordered. "I'll finish up here. And, Daniel, be careful. If these people are as organized as you think, they're not going to just run when they see a badge." I made the drive to Jefferson Hills in record time, but by the time I arrived, the situation had already resolved. A man named Roger Tate, 29 years old, had barricaded himself in his upstairs bedroom and called 911. Local police had responded, and the suspect had fled before they arrived. Roger was visibly shaken when I interviewed him. He kept a baseball bat clutched in his hands as he told his story. "I was home alone, watching a horror movie. Around 10:30 I heard someone at my side door. Thought it was late trick-or-treaters. But when I opened it, nobody was there. Then 15 minutes later, I heard someone at my back door, testing the handle. That's when I saw him through the window. Can you describe what you saw?" A man in dark clothes, wearing a tactical vest and a Halloween mask pushed up on his head. He had a crowbar. He was trying to get in, and he knew I was home. That's what scared me most. Burglars usually avoid houses when people are home. This guy didn't care. What happened next? I called 911 and grabbed my bat. I heard him break the basement window. He was trying to come up from below. I was upstairs hiding when the police arrived. He ran when he heard the sirens, but they didn't catch him. Did you see which direction he went? Toward the woods behind my house. The officers searched but didn't find anyone. I went down to the basement and examined the broken window. Boot prints in the window well, same tactical-style tread. The glass was broken inward, and I could see scrape marks where the crowbar had been used to pry the frame. But what caught my attention was what was on the basement floor directly below the window. Scratched into the concrete were tally marks, 20 of them, just like in the woods at Meadowview. I photographed the marks and went outside to check the area where Roger said the suspect had fled. The backyard bordered on a stretch of woods, and sure enough, I found boot prints leading from the house toward the tree line. And like all the others, they stopped at the edge of the woods. I stood there in the darkness, shining my flashlight at those impossible footprints, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 20 years of police work. Genuine fear. Not of being hurt or killed in the line of duty. Fear of something I couldn't explain or understand. 3 separate incidents. 3 separate locations spread across Washington County. All on the same night. All involving people in tactical gear who appeared and disappeared like smoke. All leaving behind those 20 tally marks. I radioed Sergeant Chen. "Sergeant, we need to coordinate. This isn't random. These people are hitting multiple targets simultaneously and they're using the same signature. 20 tally marks left at each scene." "Graves, we just got 2 more calls. Another sighting in Cannonsburg and one in Houston. Same descriptions. These people are everywhere tonight." I got back in my patrol car and pulled up a map of Washington County. Using a marker, I plotted all the locations where these people had been sighted. Cecil Township, Meadowview Resort, Jefferson Hills, Cannonsburg, and Houston. When I connected the dots, they formed a rough circle. And at the center of that circle was a small town called Muse. I'd lived in Washington County my entire life, and I knew Muse's history. It was an old coal mining town, mostly abandoned now, but I remembered hearing stories from my grandfather about something that had happened there. I called the station and asked Linda to pull up historical records for Muse, Pennsylvania, specifically anything from October 1944. "Graves, what am I looking for?" Linda asked. "Any incident involving multiple deaths or disappearances. Something that happened on or around Halloween." I heard typing, then a long pause. "Daniel, I found something. October 31st, 1944. There was an incident at a coal mine in Muse. A group of 20 men, members of a local militia group, were killed in what was ruled an accidental collapse. But there's a note here that the investigation was never fully completed. The mine was sealed immediately after the bodies were recovered." 20 men, I said quietly. "Linda, are there any records of what this militia group was doing before the collapse?" More typing. "There are some newspaper articles from that time. Apparently, the group was controversial. They called themselves the Vigil. They believed in— Hold on, this is strange. They believed in culling the weak during sacred nights. There were accusations that they were involved in several disappearances in 1943 and early 1944, but nothing was ever proven. After they died in the mine collapse, the disappearances stopped." My hands were shaking as I held the radio. "Linda, where exactly was this mine located?" "According to the records, it was off Route 917, about 2 miles outside of Muse. The entrance was sealed with concrete in 1945. Why? What does this have to do with tonight?" I looked at my map again. The center of the circle formed by tonight's incidents was directly over the sealed mine. "Linda, I need you to find out if there's any pattern to these incidents. Has anything like this happened before in Washington County, specifically around Halloween?" "I'll check. Give me a few minutes." I sat in my patrol car watching families walk past on the sidewalk, children in costumes laughing and comparing candy. They had no idea what was happening just beneath the surface of their normal Halloween celebrations. Linda came back on the radio 10 minutes later. "Graves, you need to hear this. I went back through old police reports. There are clusters of unexplained incidents every 10 years. 1954, 1964, 1974, 1984. All of them happening on Halloween night. All of them involving reports of people in dark clothing following or watching families. The descriptions are vague in the older reports, but they match what we're seeing tonight." "Every 10 years, I repeated. "Linda, were there any deaths associated with these incidents?" "In 1954, 2 children disappeared after a Halloween party. Never found. In 1964, a family was attacked in their home. Parents survived, but reported their attackers were soldiers who didn't speak. In 1974, 3 teenagers vanished from a Halloween bonfire. In 1984, she paused. In 1984, a state trooper named Thomas Riley was killed responding to a call about suspicious persons in tactical gear. The fear I'd been feeling crystallized into something cold and sharp. What happened to Trooper Riley? He was found in his patrol car near the old Muse mine site. Official cause of death was heart attack, but the report notes unusual circumstances. His weapon was drawn, his radio was destroyed, and witnesses reported seeing figures in the woods around his car. The investigation was inconclusive. I looked at the clock on my dashboard. It was 11:47 p.m. Halloween night was almost over. In 1984, Trooper Riley had died just after midnight, as Halloween ended and November 1st began. "Linda, I need every available unit to converge on my location. I'm heading to the old Muse mine site. If this pattern holds, that's where they'll appear next. And I think I know what the 20 tally marks mean." "What do they mean? They're counting victims." The original Vigil militia had 20 members. Every 10 years, they come back. And they're trying to collect 20 people, 20 victims to complete whatever sick ritual they believe in. Daniel, you can't be serious. You're talking about ghosts. I don't know what I'm talking about, Linda. But I know that people are dying every 10 years on Halloween night, and it's happening in a pattern centered on that mine. I'm not waiting for midnight to find out if I'm right. I started driving toward Muse, my headlights cutting through the darkness. Other units radioed that they were en route, but I was closest. I'd be there first. Route 917 was a narrow 2-lane road that wound through hills and past old farmhouses. The mine site was marked only by a rusted historical marker and a concrete barrier blocking what used to be the entrance. I pulled up to the site and got out, flashlight and weapon ready. The area was silent except for the wind rustling through the trees. The concrete barrier was old and cracked, covered in graffiti from decades of teenagers daring each other to visit the sealed mine. I was about to radio my position when I heard it. Footsteps. Multiple sets, heavy boots on leaves and gravel. They were coming from the woods on both sides of the road. I spun around, my flashlight beam sweeping across the tree line. And there they were. 5 figures in tactical gear emerging from the darkness. They moved in formation, deliberate and coordinated, spreading out to surround my position. "State Police," I shouted, my weapon trained on the nearest figure. "Stop where you are and identify yourselves." They didn't stop, they didn't speak, they just kept advancing, their movements synchronized like they were parts of the same machine. I could see their faces now, or rather their masks. Full coverage, tactical masks, the kind used by special forces. But something was wrong with the way they moved. Their steps were too perfect, too uniform, and in the moonlight I could see that their tactical gear wasn't quite right. The vests were old style, the boots were from decades past. This was military gear, but not modern military gear. I said stop. I fired a warning shot into the air. The next one goes center mass. That's when they did something that made my blood run cold. All 5 of them stopped simultaneously, raised their right hands and pointed, not at me, past me, toward the sealed mine entrance. I risked a glance behind me and saw what they were pointing at. The concrete barrier was cracking. No, not cracking. Something was breaking through from the inside. Chunks of concrete were falling away, revealing darkness beyond. And from that darkness, more figures were emerging. Not 5, not 10. More figures than I could count. All in tactical gear. All moving with that same synchronized precision. I grabbed my radio. "All units, officer needs assistance. Route 917, Muse mine site. Multiple suspects, heavily armed, do not engage alone. I repeat, do not engage alone." The original 5 figures turned their attention back to me. One of them, the leader I assumed, reached up and slowly removed their mask. It was a woman's face, pale and wrong in the moonlight. Her eyes were empty, not vacant, but literally empty, like holes in her skull. When she opened her mouth to speak, her voice was layered, multiple voices speaking at once. The vigil maintains. The week must be called. 20 years, 20 souls, 20 offerings to keep the darkness at bay. We died in service. We returned to serve. The vigil maintains. "You're not real," I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts to stay calm. "You're dead. You died in 1944. Death is service. Service is eternal. The vigil maintains." The other figures began removing their masks, revealing faces that were human but not quite right. Some had features that were too angular, others had skin that seemed to shift and change in the moonlight, and all of them had those empty eyes. "Tonight is the night," the woman continued. 20 marked, 20 claimed, But one remains unmarked, one who sees, one who knows. You, keeper of order. You may choose. Join the vigil, or join the offerings. Behind them, more figures continued to pour from the mine entrance. 20, 30, 40. Far more than had died in the original collapse. Or maybe, the woman said, that terrible smile crossing her face, there is a third choice. You can prevent it, you can break the cycle, but you must understand the cost. The vigil maintains because darkness must be held back. We are the wall. If you destroy us, what we contained will be free. My backup was arriving. I could hear sirens in the distance, but I realized that guns wouldn't stop these things. Whatever they were beyond bullets. What darkness? I demanded. What are you holding back? The woman pointed to the mine entrance. See for yourself. See what we died to contain. See what will be released if the offerings are not made. Against every instinct, I moved toward the mine entrance. The figures parted to let me pass. I shined my flashlight into the darkness beyond the broken concrete barrier. What I saw in that shaft will haunt me for the rest of my life. The darkness inside the mine wasn't natural. It was thick, almost solid, like looking into water so deep that light couldn't penetrate. But it wasn't the darkness itself that terrified me. It was what moved within it. Shapes, writhing, twisting shapes that hurt to look at. They pressed against some invisible barrier at the mine entrance, desperately trying to get through. When my flashlight beam touched them, they recoiled, but I caught glimpses. Limbs at wrong angles, faces with too many mouths, eyes that spiraled infinitely inward. What the hell is that? I breathed. The woman's layered voice spoke from behind me. In 1944, the mine workers broke through into something old, something that had been sealed beneath the earth since before humans walked these hills. We were militia. We were hunting deserters that night. When we heard the screams from the mine, we went to investigate. By the time we arrived, 12 miners were dead. The things came through the breach like a flood. We fought them. We died fighting them. And when we died, we were given a choice. I turned away from the mine entrance, unable to look at those shapes anymore. What choice? Join the darkness or hold it back? We chose service. We became the vigil. Every 10 years, on the night when the veil is thinnest, the barrier weakens. Halloween, when the dead can walk. If we do not maintain our strength, if we do not make our offerings, the barrier fails completely. Offerings, I said. Understanding dawning. You're talking about the people you've been hunting. The disappearances every 10 years. 20 souls to strengthen 20 guardians. We do not take pleasure in this. We do not choose this. We serve because we must, because if we fall, everything falls with us. Backup was arriving. Sergeant Chen's vehicle pulled up, followed by Morrison and 3 other units. They got out with weapons drawn, seeing me surrounded by the tactical gear figures. "Graves, get away from them," Chen shouted. But the figures didn't move toward me. They remained perfectly still, waiting. I held up a hand. "Sergeant, hold your fire. There's something you need to understand. Daniel, what's going on? Who are these people? How could I explain this? How could I make her understand something I barely understood myself?" The woman who'd been speaking gestured toward the mine entrance. "Show them. Let them see what we hold back." Chen and the others approached cautiously. When they shined their lights into the mine shaft and saw what writhed in the darkness, I watched their faces go pale. "What?" Morrison's voice trailed off. "What am I looking at?" "They call it the darkness," I said. The original Vigil militia died fighting it in 1944. Now, they come back every 10 years to maintain a barrier, but it costs them. They need to take people. 20 people every decade to keep their strength up. That's insane, Chen said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was staring at the shapes in the mine shaft, and I could see her rational police training warring with what her eyes were telling her. Is it? The woman asked. Look at your records. Every 10 years, we take 20. But how many would die if we failed? How many would fall if the darkness was released? You're murderers, Chen said, but her gun was lowering. You're serial killers using some kind of supernatural justification. Are we? The woman gestured to the mine. Officer Chen, would you like to test the barrier? Would you like to see if we are lying? Step closer. See what happens when the vigil is not maintained. Chen didn't move forward, and neither did any of the others. We could all see those shapes pressing against the invisible barrier, desperate to break through. There has to be another way, I said. You can't just kidnap and kill people every 10 years. There has to be a way to seal this permanently. We have searched for 50 years, the woman said. We have tried every method. The seal can only be maintained by sacrifice. Life force traded for barrier strength. Without it, the darkness spreads. First, it would consume Muse, then the county, then farther, always farther, until... She didn't need to finish. We could imagine. How do we know you're telling the truth? Morrison asked. How do we know you're not just some cult using this place to justify your crimes? The woman smiled that terrible smile. Because we are offering you a choice. We have marked 19. One more and the cycle completes. We can take the 20th, or you can offer yourselves. Join the vigil. Become guardians. Share the burden. You're asking us to become like you, I asked. To die and come back as whatever you are? We are asking you to understand. Every guardian you see here made the choice. To stand against the darkness. To protect those who cannot protect themselves. We are not monsters, Trooper Graves. We are the wall between humanity and annihilation. But the wall needs constant repair. 20 stones removed every decade. 20 must be replaced. Chen was on her radio, her voice shaking. Dispatch, this is Sergeant Chen. We need backup. And we need someone from the state police headquarters. And maybe a priest, I don't know. While Chen was radioing, I studied the figures around us. There were dozens of them now, all standing in perfect formation. Some were clearly from 1944, their gear matching that era, but others were from different times. I could see uniforms from the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. The people who disappeared, I said, realization hitting, the ones you took over the decades. Did some of them join you? Did they become guardians? Some chose service over death. Some chose to stand the vigil rather than be consumed by it. Not all, but enough. Enough to maintain the barrier at strength. I thought about Marcus Bennett and his family, about the kids on the hayride at Meadowview, about Roger and his home, terrified as someone tried to break in. 19 people marked across the county tonight. 19 potential victims. Show me, I said suddenly. Show me the 19 you've marked. Where are they now? The woman tilted her head, considering. Then she gestured, and several of the figures moved to a van parked in the shadows near the mine entrance. I hadn't even noticed it before. They opened the back doors, and I saw people inside. Unconscious, but alive. Chen and I rushed over. I recognized some of them. A couple from the Cecil Township incident, kids from the hayride, Roger from the home invasion. All of them were breathing, unharmed, but deeply unconscious. They are safe, the woman said. We do not harm unnecessarily. The terror is the marking. The fear is the offering. When midnight comes, When Halloween ends, their fear will be harvested to strengthen the barrier. Then they will be released, remembering nothing. This is how it has always been. The vigil maintains, and life continues. Wait, Morrison said. You're saying you don't actually kill them? The disappearances from past years. Some years, all are released. Some years, some choose to stay, to become guardians. But death is only necessary when the barrier is critically weak. We have not needed to take life since 1984. The fear is enough. The terror of the hunt, the marking, the capture. That fear feeds the barrier. Trooper Riley, I said. In 1984. He died here. He did not understand. He attacked us. Tried to free those we had marked before the harvest was complete. The barrier was weak that year. Very weak. When he disrupted the ritual, the darkness broke through. It took him before we could reseal it. We regret that death. We regret all deaths. But we cannot allow the barrier to fail. I looked at Chen. She looked at me. We were state police officers. Our job was to protect and serve. But how do you handle a situation like this? How do you enforce the law when the law doesn't account for dimensional barriers held by the undead? Sir, we've got a situation. One of the other troopers was pointing down the road. Multiple vehicles approaching. Looks like civilian vehicles. My stomach dropped. I pulled out my radio. Linda, did you alert anyone else to our location? Negative, Trooper. Only state police units. Then who were these people? The vehicles pulled up, about 8 of them, and people got out. I recognized Marcus Bennett immediately. But there were others too. People from each of the marking incidents tonight. And they were armed. Rifles, shotguns, handguns. A civilian militia coming to confront what they thought was a terrorist cell. Oh no, I muttered. Chen, we have to stop this. But it was too late. Marcus was at the front, his Glock drawn, pointing at the tactical gear figures. These are the people who stalked my family, who threatened us. Officers, arrest them now, or we'll deal with them ourselves. Mr. Bennett, lower your weapon, Chen ordered. The situation is under control. Under control? They've been terrorizing the entire county. They took people. We have a right to defend ourselves and our families. The vigil figures hadn't moved. They stood perfectly still, watching the armed civilians with those empty eyes. The woman who'd been speaking turned to me. You see our dilemma, Trooper? We maintain the vigil, and humans hunt us. We appear as monsters to prevent true monsters from emerging. We are feared by those we protect. This is the burden. This is the cost. I stepped between the armed civilians and the vigil. Everyone needs to calm down. Mr. Bennett, I understand your fear, but you don't understand what's happening here. I understand that these people hunted us like animals. I understand that they've been doing this for decades, and I understand that the police won't do anything about it. Behind the vigil figures, I could see the shapes in the mine entrance becoming more agitated. They were pressing harder against the barrier, sensing the chaos, the fear. If the barrier weakened now, if the vigil was distracted or destroyed. Marcus, listen to me, I shouted. Those things you see behind them in the mine. That's what they're protecting us from. They're not the monsters. They're the ones holding the monsters back. That's insane. I know how it sounds. But look at what's in that mine shaft. Some of the civilians moved closer, shining flashlights into the darkness. When they saw the writhing shapes, the incomprehensible forms pressing against the invisible barrier, several of them stumbled backward in shock. What the hell is that? Someone shouted. That's what the vigil has been fighting since 1944, I said. They died in that mine. They come back every 10 years to maintain a barrier that keeps those things sealed. Yes, they've been marking people. Yes, They've been causing fear, but they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it to save us." "Why should we believe that?" Marcus demanded. "Why should we trust these things?" The woman stepped forward, and several guns immediately trained on her. She held up her empty hands. "Because," she said, "we are offering you proof." The barrier weakens as we speak. Too many guardians focused on you instead of their vigil. Watch what happens when the wall begins to crack. A sound came from the mine entrance. A cracking, splintering sound, like glass breaking. The invisible barrier was fracturing. One of the shapes pressed through. Just one, but that was enough. It was small, no bigger than a dog, but it moved wrong. Too many joints, too many limbs, all wrong angles and impossible movements. When it opened, what might have been a mouth, the sound it made was like grinding metal and screaming children. Several civilians fired at it. The bullets hit, passed through, hit again. The thing didn't care. It moved towards the nearest person, one of the armed civilians, a young man in his 20s. The vigil figures moved instantly, reforming their circle, focusing their attention on the breach. The woman raised her hand, and streams of pale light shot from her palm toward the escaped entity. It recoiled, writhing, trying to escape the light. Other vigil members joined in, and together they drove the thing back toward the mine entrance. The young man who'd been targeted was on the ground, hyperventilating. The thing hadn't touched him, but the mere proximity had been enough to send him into shock. It took the vigil nearly 5 minutes to force the entity back through the barrier and reseal it. When it was done, the woman turned back to us. Even through her inhuman features, I could see exhaustion. "You see," she said simply, "this is what we prevent. This is why the vigil maintains. Would you prefer we did not?" The clearing was silent except for the sound of the young man's ragged breathing. No one was pointing guns anymore. We'd all seen what lived in that mine. We'd all seen what would happen if the barrier failed. Marcus lowered his Glock, his hand shaking. "How many of those things are in there?" "We do not know. We have never gone deep enough to count them. We only know that they must never be released." Chen stepped forward. "You said 19 are marked. You need 20. What happens if you don't get the 20th? The barrier will hold, but barely. It will be weak, vulnerable. Next year, the year after, something could break through. A natural disaster, human interference, simple erosion. Without the full offering, the seal is incomplete." "And if we give you the 20th, I asked, "what happens then?" "The harvest completes at midnight. The fear is collected. The barrier is strengthened. Everyone marked is released, unharmed, with no memory of this night. The vigil returns to sleep. In 10 years, we wake again. The cycle continues." I looked at my watch. 11:52 p.m. 8 minutes until Halloween ended. 8 minutes until midnight. "What if," I said slowly, "what if instead of marking someone else, you had a volunteer? Someone who understood what you were doing and willingly contributed their fear?" The woman's empty eyes studied me. "You would volunteer? A keeper of order, willingly becoming the offering. Not me alone, all of us." I gestured to Chen, Morrison, the other troopers. "We've seen what you're protecting us from. We understand now. Take your 20th from us. Take our fear. Use it to strengthen the barrier." Chen looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Graves, you can't be serious. Look at those people in the van, Sergeant. They're unconscious, terrified, going to wake up with nightmares they can't remember. Look at the civilians who came here tonight, armed and angry because they didn't understand. Someone has to know. Someone has to remember. Someone has to carry this burden. Let it be us. Let it be the police. Isn't that our job? To face the darkness so others don't have to? The vigil woman was silent for a long moment. Then, in 50 years, no one has volunteered. No one has willingly offered themselves. If you do this, you will remember everything. The fear will be real. The marking will be permanent. But you will serve knowingly. You will become witnesses to the vigil. We're already witnesses, I said. Now, let us be participants. Let us share this burden. Chen was the first to step forward beside me. He's right. This is what we signed up for. Protecting people from threats, even threats they can't understand. Morrison joined us. Then the other troopers. One by one they stepped forward. The woman nodded slowly. Then we accept. 5 witnesses. 5 who will remember. 5 who will know. When the vigil wakes in 10 years, you will be ready. You will prepare others. You will ensure that the cycle continues. What do we have to do? Chen asked. Face us. Face what we are. Face what we protect against. Let the fear in. Let it mark you. And when midnight comes, let it go. The vigil figures moved closer, forming a circle around us 5 troopers. The woman stood at the center, and as we watched, she began to change. Her features shifted, became less human, more like the things in the mine shaft. Not the same, but closer. Close enough to trigger that primal fear that lives in the back of every human mind. The other vigil members changed too. Some grew taller, their limbs extending. Others seemed to fold in on themselves, becoming compressed and wrong. All of them became something that the human mind instinctively rejected, something that triggered every survival instinct. I wanted to run. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to get away, to escape. I could feel my heart hammering, my palms sweating, my breath coming in short gasps. This was real fear, not the adrenaline of a traffic stop or even a shooting. This was existential terror, the fear of things that shouldn't exist, the fear of the unknown and unknowable. Beside me, I could hear Chen's breathing becoming rapid. Morrison muttered prayers under his breath. We were all terrified, and that was the point. That was the offering. The woman's voice, when it came, was no longer layered. It was something older, something that resonated in my bones. When midnight comes, release this fear into us. Let us carry it. Let us use it to maintain the wall. And remember, witnesses of the vigil, remember what you saw here. Remember what you felt. Remember what you chose to face. My watch alarm went off. Midnight. All at once, the fear that had been building in me rushed out, drawn from me like water from a drain. I felt it leave, felt the terror being pulled away. Around me, the other troopers gasped as the same thing happened to them. The vigil figures absorbed it, drew it in, and as they did, they began to change back. Their features became more human, their forms less wrong. The barrier at the mine entrance glowed briefly with pale light, then faded. Halloween was over. November 1st had begun. The vigil's work for another decade was complete. The woman who'd been speaking stood before me once more, looking almost human again. It is done. The barrier holds. Thank you, witnesses. In 10 years, we will return. Be ready. Wait, I said. How do we prepare? What do we tell people? Tell them nothing. Let them forget. But you 5 will remember. When 2004 comes, when Halloween approaches, you will know. You will feel it. And you will prepare however you see fit. Perhaps by then, you will have found another way. A better way. We would welcome that. We would welcome an end to this cycle. But until then, the vigil maintains. One by one, the vigil figures walked back toward the mine entrance. They didn't disappear or fade. They simply walked into the darkness, and the darkness accepted them. The woman was the last to go. She looked back at us once, and for just a moment, I thought I saw something like hope in those empty eyes. Then she was gone, and we were alone in the clearing with the unconscious civilians in the van and the armed citizens who'd come to fight.